Hello again. The recent murders in the Irish town of Sligo were notable for what was not said about them, which was that they were an example of how many Muslims view homosexuality, that is to say with detestation and horror. This is a bit of a problem, of course, for wishy-washy liberals, because they love Muslims and are desperately keen to be seen to be supportive of Islam and deadly enemies of those horrible Islamic phobic people like Brexit voters and Tories. Of course, in some Muslim countries, being gay can mean you fetch up dangling at the end of a rope. Iran, for instance, executes men for committing sodomy. In many other Muslim countries, people are thrown into prison for behaving in that way. This makes it very difficult if you're a right on and with it kind of person. On the one hand, you love gay people and think their way of life should be celebrated, but then again, you're very keen too on being down with the Muslims. In Britain, this is a particularly acute difficulty because in some areas with many Muslims, active attempts are made to discourage homosexuals from visiting their streets. In the London district of Whitechapel, for example, which is in the borough of Newham, they're not at all keen on seeing male homosexuals walking around. They're not all that enthusiastic about girls wearing short skirts either, or people drinking alcohol, come to that. At one time, signs were placed on lampposts indicating that all this homosexual business was not tolerated round there. This ended up being publicised in newspapers though, so these days devout young men patrol the streets instead, issuing verbal warnings if they see young women in what they regard as provocative clothing, or men who look as though they might be sodomites. Every so often, of course, one of these moral crusades will go a bit too far, as happened a couple of years ago in the Berkshire town of Reading. A park in the town is popular with homosexuals, and in June 2020, a Libyan refugee went berserk there with a knife, killing 3 gay men. Qari Saadallah shouted Allahu Akbar as he charged through the park, hacking away at any man he could see as part of a religious motivated terrorist attack. This is very awkward for progressive people because it does tend to show militant Islam in a poor light and suggest a degree of homophobia, to say the least of it. I mean, this is real homophobia, not just refusing to bake somebody a cake with LGBT symbols on or to allow 2 men to share a room in a B&B. This is the real thing, murdering those whom you suppose to be gay. One way of avoiding having to deal with this awful contradiction, that is to say between being keen on Muslims and also wanting to stick up for the rights of gays, is to simply ignore one aspect of a case like this. In the description to this video, I give a link to a piece from the BBC website about the Reading murders and the appeal which the killer made against his conviction. Almost unbelievably, nowhere in this piece is it mentioned that hatred of homosexuals was the motive behind the murders. This would spoil the image of Islam as a tolerant faith, you see, and lay it open to criticism. Trust me, if the killer had been a member of the English Defence League, you would have heard all about the homophobic motive. So it is that when a firm of devout Christians in Northern Ireland refused to bake a cake celebrating gay marriage, the BBC were all over the story and made sure that everybody knew that some Christians display homophobia. When a devout Muslim murdered 3 gay men, though, the BBC feel it a little indelicate to draw attention to it. I love this attitude on the part of left-wing intellectuals. One sees it too in clothing for women. If anybody criticises the Muslim veil or hijab, the left-wingers go mad and claim that women should be allowed to wear whatever they wish to wear. and that this is an important principle of freedom of choice. When hardline Muslims, though, patrol parts of London and tell women in short skirts that their un-Islamic clothing is not welcome in that area, you'll hear nothing at all from the BBC or any left-wing sources at all. Apparently, women's right to wear what they wish does not count if it upsets Muslims. I've remarked before that I certainly have nothing against Islam, but then again, neither do I have any illusions about the religion. I'm well aware that there are fundamentalists belonging to Islam who do and say awful things. What I cannot abide is the hypocrisy of those who pretend to support Islam while ignoring anything connected with it which clashes with some other sacred cow, such as homosexuality.